right. All right. So hi everybody. Thanks for being here and joining us today for a Friends from the Field webinar. This one is called Uber Driver for the Birds, which I think is a really good name. My name is Marin Brock, and I'm the Outreach Coordinator for Blue Hill Heritage Trust. And these webinars are co-hosted with Island Heritage Trust. So we also have Noelle on the panel from Island Heritage Trust. And before we begin, I wanted to say that we've been doing these webinars for a few years now. And if you're interested in looking at past webinar archives, you can find them on our website or on our YouTube channel. And all of our webinars and online resources are free and open to the public, and every person is welcome to attend and take advantage of these learning opportunities. If you appreciate the work we do and are interested in making a donation or a contribution to our work, then you can donate on our website. And if you're already a donor, then thank you. All right, and so our next webinar is going to be with an expert from Maine who is going to be talking about the biology, history, identification, and management of invasive jumping worms in Maine, which is going to be really interesting. And that webinar is going to be on June 6th, so we hope that you can attend that one. And now I'm going to pass over to Noelle, who's going to talk about some housekeeping logistics.
Thanks, Marin. Welcome, everyone. We're really excited to get some awesome stories and learning from Ellen today about her rescue missions for Avian Haven. And if any questions come up in the midst of her presentation, feel free to enter them in the Q&A feature. And then Marin and I will read them out loud at the end of Ellen's presentation. So make sure you stay till the end.
Sweet. Thanks, Noelle. So for today's webinar, we're lucky enough to be joined by Ellen Campbell, who is a board member of the Penobscot Valley chapter of Maine Audubon and the Holden Land Trust, and a Holden Town Councilor. Ellen is here to discuss her volunteer work with the Avian Haven Wildlife Rehabilitation Facility in Freedom, Maine. Part of this work requires picking up birds in distress that have been rescued and occasionally capturing injured birds and transporting them to Avian Haven so they can hopefully be released back into the wild. And so without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Ellen.
Thank you, Marin and Noelle. It's quite a pleasure to be with you folks today. And I never tire of telling my stories, and there are some interesting ones. I have been a volunteer driver for Avian Haven for almost 3.5 years now. And I have to say it's probably one of the most rewarding things I could do at this stage of life. You will hold on here. We're waiting to advance. My apologies. We did a test advance, and oh, for heaven's sakes, what could I be doing wrong?
Are you trying to advance to the next slide?
Yes.
And are you using the buttons or the mouse?
I've tried both. I'm using buttons now.
Huh.
Might there be let me see if page down works. No.
Your mouse isn't working when you click the arrow?
The mouse doesn't have an arrow.
Try clicking on the arrow on the screen underneath your slide there.
Okay, I see what you're saying. My mouse is not showing up on the screen.
Interesting.
Yes.
Are you using two screens?
Yes.
Okay, so your mouse is probably on one screen and you need to drag it all the way over to the other.
Okay, I see my cursor is on the big supplementary screen, and there
I see it.
Oh, there it is.
Yay, we found the mouse.
There we go.
Awesome.
Now okay, excellent. Thank you for your patience. So I will refer frequently to several people that just continue to show up in this presentation. Laura is the intake manager at Avian Haven. She's the one who makes the calls and contacts when she learns of a bird that needs help. Shotgun Sue is a friend of mine who likes to ride along. Way Station Sue is another Stu who lives in Bangor and has typically taken in birds for overnights because it's too late to get them to Avian Haven. But she has the ability to tape and bind broken wings. She can feed birds. She can do all manner of things that I cannot do. Richard is a fellow driver from Brewer. Fufu is the family bear mascot. He shows up here and then. And Gordon the Corgi is a grand dog who you will see occasionally riding along. That did not go well. Just a minute. My arrow is behind that green thing right there. There we go. I occasionally go bird watching in several places. One of my favorite places is Mount Hope Cemetery in Bangor. It's huge. There's a lot of varied terrain, and it's a birding heaven. I was there one day. If any of you are at all familiar with it, it has two big hillsides with a valley in the middle, through which run roads and a stream. So I was up on the high hill on one side, looking for an eagle's nest, which I didn't find. But I heard a whole lot of crows making a lot of noise, putting up a lot of fuss over on the other hill. So I said that could mean only one thing. There's somebody over there the crows don't like, and they're trying to chase it away. I had better get over there. So I hoofed it down the hill, across the stream and the road, and up the other side to where the crows were all in a deciduous tree, but they were focusing on this massive pine tree. I could not see anything, but I focused my binoculars on the trunk of the tree and worked my way up, and this is what I saw, a great horned owl. And I thought, wow, am I lucky to see this? I came back another day and to see if it was still there, if there was perhaps a nest there, and I took pictures. And oftentimes I don't know what I've captured until I get home and put the card into the computer. And this is what I saw, and I was pretty pleased with it and didn't quite realize what I had found. There's a baby there. And I was absolutely thrilled. So I went back a few days later, or maybe a week later. I kind of kept my eye on that tree, and I could tell where the nest was. There was lots of sticks. So I saw my friend Richard walking along, and I said, "Hello, Richard. What's new and what's exciting?" And he says, I just took a baby great horned owl down to Avian Haven a week ago, he said, and I don't know where the nest is. Nobody knows where the nest might be that it had fallen out of. And I said, well, I know, would you like to see it? And he was thrilled that I could show him the nest. So when the baby great horned owl was ready for release, Avian Haven called Richard, because he was the original transporter, to see if he was wanting to do the release, and the owl was coming right back to Mount Hope Cemetery. So he called me and said, would you like to be present when we release that owl? And I said, oh, yes, I certainly would. So here we are. That's Richard's wife managing the box. And this is that baby owl coming back home. We can only assume that it found its family, but it's where it had started out, and that a release is one of the most thrilling parts of this volunteer job that we get to be a part of. I don't know if you are at all familiar with Avian Haven, but they are a nonprofit 501c3 organized in 1999 by Diane Wynn and Mark Payne. There are a good number of buildings there, different types of habitats, pool buildings, swimming, flight buildings, all manner of things. And you can only imagine what they have to organize and present for food to feed as many birds as they get there. They have staff of consulting veterinarians, wildlife specialists, and volunteers, and it is a very busy place. They, of course, do not operate in any kind of a vacuum. They have to have permits from the state of Maine Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife, as well as the federal government's U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services. They are funded by private donations and foundation grants. And what it isn't, and I'm asked this often, can anybody go there to visit and view what they're doing and view the birds that they have in their care? And the answer to that is no, unfortunately not. And it's not open to the public, and it's not open to photographers. It would be a great place to capture some interesting birds. They have an annual caseload. In 1999, they began with like 300 birds. In 2021, it was more than 3,900. And they have over 300 volunteer drivers. There's that thing in my way again. But my enter key is working, so we'll go with that. This is Laura's computer screen, Laura, the intake manager. Every one of those dots on the state of Maine map is a volunteer driver. When they get a call that there's a bird at any point in the state, she looks at this map and to see who is the volunteer that she can call on. So she will text the person that is most likely to be available or close to the need. And she will say, are you available to get a bird so-and-so? And somebody will say yes, and she'll then text the name and the phone number. And so the transporter and the person who is holding the bird communicate directly to make arrangements to transport that bird. This was my very first bird, and owls tend to be kind of a favorite of mine. This one had a broken wing. I think I picked it up in Bangor, and I had to endure a ferret climbing up my leg in order to get the owl out of there. And then a few days later, there was another barred owl, and I think I had a pigeon from Fort Kent, and I believe I picked these up at Way Station Sue's in Bangor. In January of 2021, a dovekie was blown into Beals Island. Dovekies are one of those birds that live entirely at sea, and they only come to land to breed and raise their young. It had no business being at Beals Island, but storms will do what they will do. And so I had the privilege of transporting this dovekie, the cutest little thing. Occasionally, people will send a check along with the bird or some cash. And on this particular trip, the bear has got, I think he's got himself $20 there. And then we have a wood duck over here. I released a hummingbird to Eddington. That was fun to let go. I had to release a downy woodpecker. Laura told me that it needed to go to Winterport, and we looked on a map and found a somewhat isolated place for me to release it. So I found the area, got out of the car with my box in hand, and another car came along, and a woman rolled the window down and said, "You're not releasing puppies or kittens here, are you?" And I was able to tell her no, I'm releasing a bird, and I asked if her daughter might like to help me release this woodpecker. And I've got this in slow motion to start with. And her daughter was thrilled, and the mother was also thrilled. And that's it. That's as quick as releases often go. And this is a little wood duck. I think they're sitting in Shotgun Sue's lap, and the teddy bear is getting a little going over with this cute little wood duck. On this particular day, I picked up at Way Station Sue's in Bangor 2 goslings, 2 hummingbirds, 2 baby crows, and 1 pigeon. And you can tell by the date that this is now baby season, which it is today. And I came back to Bangor with 3 pigeons from Avian Haven that were ready for release. And Laura said, could you release them somewhere where there are other pigeons so they won't be lonely? And I said, well, sure. And to me, a perfect place to release pigeons is in a park with a statue. And that's in Bangor. This was a baby starling all by himself. Sometimes they fall out of the nest. This is a nest in somebody's air conditioner, a nest of starling chicks. This older gentleman didn't want to take his air conditioner in and out every season, so he built it into a box arrangement. But on this particular day, he went to start it up and he found it was occupied. So I got called to get this little bunch out. And just a few days later, there was another nest of starlings that had been on someone's private airplane at the Bangor International Airport. The person had to use their plane, so this nest had to go. Occasionally, turtles are taken to Avian Haven. This one you might be able to see, it's got a nasty crack in it, but somebody knew enough to wrap it in saran wrap. I don't know how they dared to do that. It's being a snapping turtle and all. But so I took that one down there. And if these turtles, which are usually females because they're on the move to find a place to lay eggs, if the turtle does not survive, they would harvest the eggs and incubate them to hatching. Laura got a call one day from somebody who said he'd found this raven in Bangor and he was going to go home, and could she have somebody pick it up? She said, of course. So she called me because it was Bangor and I'm kind of close. So I called the gentleman and said, what's your address? He gave me the address, and I said, I didn't know we had a Hartford in Maine. And he said, it's a closely guarded secret. So I did not even ask him where it was. I just took the address, I put it in my GPS and headed out. And it turned out to be maybe 25 or 30 miles west of Augusta. Laura would never have sent me that far, but I got there eventually anyway. And put the bird in a box I had that I thought was pretty cool. Put it in the back seat of my car, had gone down the road just about 1 mile, and I saw the raven was up in the back window of the car. He had done a Houdini trick and gotten out of the box. I knew he couldn't ride up there in my fairly new car without causing some damage or running me off the road. So I came upon this construction business. There were 2 men in the yard. One was sitting in an ATV. The other was standing there and talking to him. So I said, okay, here goes. So I wheeled in and spun around and pulled right up to them and rolled my window down and said, "I need some help." And they said, "What can we do for you?" And I said, "There's a raven loose in the car." And one guy said, "Did it fly in there?" And I said, "No, he escaped from a box. He's on his way to rehab." So they were so kind. I said, "Do you possibly have a box, maybe some duct tape that would be better than what I was trying to use?" And I said, "I'd hope to get him in a box before he makes a mess up in the back window." And one guy looks around the back of the car and he says, "No, too late." So anyway, they were absolutely wonderful help. And I was on my way, but there was definitely a mess in the back window, not on any solid part of that ledge back there, but on the perforated part where the speaker is. So I let it dry, and eventually it vacuumed and brushed out just fine. Kingfishers nest in gravel banks, and they drill a hole deep into the bank, and then they make a room, a chamber at the end of it. And that's where they lay their eggs and incubate them and raise them. I did not know they could have 7 youngsters, but this one did. And it was disturbed by an excavator, and they had absolutely no idea that this nest was in there. So out of the 7 nestlings, only one died because it was the one that had been struck by the backhoe. But that was, I've never been that close to a kingfisher. They don't usually let you get that close. This is my granddaughter with Foo the bear and a box that we picked up at L.O. Bean in Ellsworth. This box was coming from Machias, and I believe it was a Phoebe. And this was one of the relay trips. Sometimes one doesn't go hundreds of miles at a time. Somebody might go 50 or 60 miles. Somebody else will meet them, pick it up, take it another leg. I got a call from Laura asking if I could meet a warden at Way Station Sue's in Bangor. He had a loon that was coming in. And I said, sure. My sister, who was here from Florida, in the midst of a battle with cancer, was staying at her daughter's in Brewer. I called her, asked her if she felt at all like going for a ride to Avian Haven today, and she said, yes, she thought she could do that. So we got to Way Station Sue's before the warden did, and when my sister saw him drive in and get out of his truck, she says, "Oh my golly, that's John Parker from Northwoods Law." And she leaped out of the car to introduce herself to him and ask if she could have her picture taken with him. And he said, yes, of course. He was such a good sport. And later, my sister said that was by far one of the best days she'd had in a very long time. He was a good sport. This is an osprey. I believe it's a young one. And this may be the very same one when it arrived at Avian Haven. Note the heavy leather gloves for handling a bird of prey. And somebody gave me a pigeon all trussed up in a bananagram case. I have no idea, but that bird wasn't going anywhere. And this is a bald eagle. They often come by way of wardens who have the biggest crates to put eagles in that you can imagine. And I think they give no consideration to what somebody is driving for a vehicle because they don't fit easily in a small car. But this one, I decided we don't need to take that crate out and then put it back in to return it to the warden. I had the girls from downstairs at Avian Haven come up to get the eagle, and note her big welding gloves, that she is a special way to handle an eagle, and it's with gloves and usually turned away from you. It took 2 of them, but I didn't have to take the crate out of the car. An American kestrel is an absolutely gorgeous little falcon. It's blue and rust, black and white. And the gentleman who delivered this one to me was had found this on a farm, his own farm. And I suggested then he might like to look up on the internet how to make an American kestrel house. And he was going to go right home and do that. I would love to have one of them around. They're often seen on the telephone wires along the roadside where there's a field, and they're scoping out and looking for prey, little rodents in the fields. This is Way Station Sue at her house, and I had delivered her this owl. And she has devoted a couple of rooms in her house to taking care of these birds that need help and are on their way to Avian Haven. So she took the owl out of the cage, and he ended up getting away from her and landed on the curtain rod in the bathroom. And I noticed that she just, with her gloves, she just reached up, grabbed him by the ankles and pulled him down. This young great blue heron was hanging out at a campground, I think in Stetson, and he was very much enjoying the chipmunk population there. He would stand on the edge of a tent platform and wait for a chipmunk to poke his head out from underneath, and he would have himself an instant snack. Unfortunately, he got himself tangled up with traffic and got hit by a car. And he did not survive. He had far too many broken bones, unfortunately. He was a beautiful bird, but he'd had a hard time. Have you ever seen a baby pigeon? We always hear that birds are light as feathers, so to speak. But pigeons are just like a heavy lump of clay, and it absolutely surprised me. I've rescued a few and transported a few since that first one, but they're definitely funny looking birds. Here we are capturing a barred owl. You can see in the left picture, he's pretty well camouflaged, but he can't fly. And it's Way Station Sue's in the blue plaid shirt on the right, and my granddaughter, Jill, has the pink box on the left. And so we kind of corner that owl and get him in. You heard me mention Gordon the corgi, grand dog. I sometimes have ended up being in charge of him, of babysitting him or whatever. So I took him for a walk in November at the Hart Farm. Holden Land Trust has some trails on the Hart Farm. So I thought Gordon and I should take a walk. Luckily, I had my binoculars with me, because as we were just coming into a field, I saw something out of the corner of my eye fly up into the tree above. And I thought it might be a hawk, but when I looked up, it was this guy, an owl, a barred owl. This picture was taken with my phone, and he just sat there and watched us. He didn't fly away, so we left before he did, but I was thrilled to have seen him. And I sort of named him Otis just for the fun of it, because sometimes we just get carried away and name the birds. A very short while later, an owl was brought to me from Copeland Hill, had been hit by a vehicle. And so I took him to Avian Haven. And when it was time for him to be released on December 29th, I took him right back to Copeland Hill, but I took him away from the road so that he wouldn't make that mistake again. And the person releasing this owl from the box is the person who had inadvertently hit him with a vehicle. So he was pleased to be able to do this. So whether this was Otis or not, I don't know, but it made for a good story. So he sits there, surveying his surroundings, reacclimating himself, perhaps, and giving us a little show. He wasn't in any hurry to leave, and we all left before he did. We said, well, let's leave him to it. When we release owls, it's usually at dusk, so that I suppose that's at supper time for them. In November of that year, I got a message to meet Rick Willett, a warden. He had rescued a great horned owl from a manure pit from a really big farm in Herman. The kids on that farm named the owl Gerald. So I met Rick Willett. I don't quite remember where, but anyway, he had this big box in the back of his warden pickup truck. And I said to him, I see he didn't ride in the cab with you. He said, oh no, he says, it's not bad. So he, of course, had to ride in my back seat. And it wasn't bad unless Gerald moved. And then he stirred up all those nasty, stinky molecules. But he got there to Avian Haven, had to crack the window every once in a while. And here he is getting a bath. And he does not look at all pleased. And the rinse, but he sure did look good when he was done. And I got to take him home, a few days later, back to the farm in Herman. Rick Willett, the warden, was there. The two kids were there, and I think the farm owners were there as well. So Rick is releasing the owl. And I thought that was a video, but it's not going to show. This is another owl that was found just like this in the road. And the person who found it gave me this picture. He waited over an hour for me to get to the far side of Pushaw Pond to pick him up. And he did get released on December 16th, just a couple of weeks later. It was okay. And these are pictures that the rescuer had also sent to me. Unfortunately, I couldn't reach him when it was time to release the owl because I would love to have had him there. Then at the University of Maine apartments in Orono, there were some girls who were sharing an apartment, and they were concerned that this owl had been on the ground outside their door for hours and hours. And so I was called to go get him because there surely must be something wrong with him. But as we carefully approached that owl, he flew up into this tree. And if he could speak, he would have said, nothing doing, I'm not going with you. He was fine. He was just apparently resting. And I said, as long as you're going to sit there, I am going to get pictures. Beautiful example of camouflage. Another owl, similar situation. This gentleman with his truck from, I think, Bangor Pipe and Supply waited over an hour for me to get to Route 1A in Winniport to rescue that owl and take him to Avian Haven. And then sometime later, I was called to take him to release in Winniport. And we took him away from Route 1A and more toward the river where we let him go. This is another friend of mine who likes to go. And she's going to ask me, how come he won't come out? What are we going to do? I said, just dump him. Yeah, just dump him. And of course, we aimed him at what I thought would be the best tree area for him to fly to. And he did head in that direction, but changed his mind and went in just the place I didn't want him to go. It was kind of brushy and not wide open. I was worried about his feathers, but he was fine. We seem to have a lot of owls here. This one was captured on February 18th. I was called because this gentleman, homeowner, had seen him. He thought he'd been hit by a car, and he was hanging around on the branches of the trees in his yard. But by the time I got there, he couldn't find him. But we looked around a bit, and he did find him eventually. And he was right on the edge of the woods on a branch about eye level. And he had a fish net, and I had a fish net. And I said, you go around the front to distract him, and I'll come around the back with my net, and I'll hopefully be able to snag him. I remembered what Way Station Sue did with the owl in her bathroom, and I just reached up and grabbed him by his ankles. And then he got released back to that home. So here I'm telling him, turn the box, because he doesn't want to look at us when he's trying to get out of there. And I'm probably also saying, dump him. There he goes. So he was down there maybe 5 or 6 weeks. It must feel good to go home. One doesn't get close to a peregrine falcon very often, and this one was on Union Street in Bangor at one of the healthcare facilities across from Fort Mall. I didn't take this picture. The person who captured him and boxed him up took the picture and gave it to me. But absolutely gorgeous. So I don't know if he was attempting to nest there or not, but I think he ran into a building. This is a Wilson snipe, and this was spring migratory season, and he was headed probably for the Sedgiunkie stream behind the Cozy Corner store in Orrington. And he got hit by a car, but they're an absolutely beautiful bird. He didn't get there, and I do not know if he did eventually get released. But he, after migrating all that distance, to get foiled, and that way was kind of sad. And this is a gentleman was living out of his truck who rescued this mallard at a McDonald's, and I thought that was pretty nice of him. Here is a bunch of baby woodcocks. I'm not quite sure exactly where they came from, but little fluff balls are the cutest things. This wild turkey was found in Holden. A dog had dragged it out of the woods. You can see feathers all over the lawn there. And I got him, I captured him, boxed him up, got him to Avian Haven, and they gave it a good once over, and they found that the bird had a lot of bird shot. So he had survived an encounter with a hunter, but eventually he did not. He was covered in lice and was not able to take care of himself. So unfortunately, he had to be euthanized, but he gave it a good try. Have you ever seen the running of the alewives? This is the right time of year, and the alewives are coming from the ocean up into freshwater streams to spawn in lakes. This is an example of alewives coming up into Damascotta Lake. This is at Damascotta Mills. And my family has a cemetery in Noblesboro right close by. And my brother and his wife and I were going there to do some maintenance work. And I asked if they had ever seen the running of the Elwise. They said no. And I said, well, then let's meet at Penobscot Mills so you can see, because it's quite the experience. It's an amazing event. So I got there before they did, and I was just driving across the bridge headed to the parking lot uphill when a herring gull fell straight out of the sky, splat right onto the roadway. And I had told Laura I wasn't available that day. So by the time I got the car parked, got a box out of the trunk, and went to go pick up that gull out of the road, it was gone. I don't know how it could have been gone. It was gone. Before I could put the box back in the car, it happened again. Splat right in the middle of the road, and a half a fish came out of his gullet. So just want you to see what a frenzy this is as the fish are going up the falls. Safety in numbers, of course, but so see how they swallow that fish whole. Somebody who was there told me that sometimes those gulls eat more fish than they really have capacity for. And so they can't fly well, so which must be why they ended up crashing onto the pavement. So I called Laura and said, I got a gull here in Penobscot Mills, and she sent somebody, and they were there within 15 minutes. That's a little white-throated sparrow and a tree swallow, I think, all on the same day. This is a snapping turtle. This is my snapping turtle. He was good sized. I got a call that the U.S. postal worker had called in. She was guarding this injured turtle that had been hit by a motorcycle. And the gentleman who had hit it was so upset that she told him to go ahead, go on home. She would take care of it. So I thought I was really smart, and I put a snow shovel in the car and a big box and another shovel and a prod. And I found her on Union Street in Bangor near an overpass. And she had it in a box that was too small for it. So I said, oh, good. So I set the snow shovel down, and we proceeded to try to tip it from the little box into the big box. And Ellen had her hand in the way, and the turtle chomped on my 2 fingers. And I do not know what possessed the turtle to let go, but I'm awfully glad he did. And it took a trip to walk-in care, and the fingernail on the upper fingernail took 5 months to come off, and I got a big gash on the other finger, but I was very lucky. I didn't lose fingers. This is another little duckling, a mallard. And Gordon's guarding something here. I don't know quite what, but he was smiling, and I just loved his company. This is a little Canada gosling. This is a nest of grackles that arrived at Sprague's Nursery in Bangor in a shipment of shrubbery for sale. So they were quite far removed from their mother, and I'm guessing when their mother got back with her next load of food, she didn't have any idea where the kids had gone. This was a house finch that the kids at the Weatherby School in Hamden had seen fall out of the nest. Nobody knew where the nest was. But this was the day after the Uvalde school shooting in Texas. And I didn't know in that whole complex of schools in Hamden which was a Weatherby, but there seemed to be some people at a maintenance garage that I could stop there and ask them. And they said, oh, that's that one right down there. Just go to the front door, ring the doorbell. He said, somebody will come to the door. I did ring the doorbell. Nobody came to the door. Nobody even opened a window to speak to me. But I did get a text message from Laura. She says, look under the largest lilac tree. It's under there. I could hear the bird, but I couldn't see it. And I looked and looked. I was most uncomfortable prowling around in the shrubbery under the windows of that school under those circumstances. Eventually, he came out where I could catch him. But that was not a fun one. Hurricane Fiona had some pretty strong winds and blew this young first-year puffin into Presque Isle, where he did not belong. There's no food in Presque Isle for him. He needs his food from the ocean. By the time he got relayed to Bangor and I got him to Avian Haven, he did not survive once, after he had been there. Unfortunately, he'd been without his seafood for far too long. This bald eagle was in one of those aerial conflicts in Hamden in someone's backyard, and the residents had witnessed this aerial entanglement, and they both came crashing to the ground without letting go. And so the eagle that was on the top was the lucky one. He did let go and he flew away. This one was injured. And so it was Way Station Sue put on her boots and she managed to wade into the swamp to capture the eagle, crated him up, and I picked him up from her. And he got released, well, not before he got treated. So when you've got an eagle in a crate like this, you don't reach in and pull them out. You take the crate apart and take him out in that way. So here's a staff giving him a going over and anesthetizing him so that they can examine him and see what he needs. And then when he was released on October 7th, I was invited to be there as well. And that's Way Station Sue with a yellow glove, and that's Mark Payne on the right. Here they take the crate apart. We released him at Benton Falls, where there were other eagles around, and there were plenty of fish, I believe, at that site. It was either a FedEx or a UPS driver going through Ellsworth who noticed this young herring gull at a ball field, who was in trouble. And would I go down and capture it? So they told me right where to find it, and that's exactly where it was. And I thought, I wonder how I'm going to catch this bird, because it was mobile. It could run. It couldn't fly, but it could run. That fishing lure has like 3 hooks on each end of it. And some of the hooks were through the bird's beak, and hooks on the other end were through his left shoulder. I had a big towel and I was able to herd him over to some deep grass where I thought he'd have a little more trouble motivating. And that worked. I was able to pick him up with a towel. By the time I got him to Avian Haven, the hooks had come loose from his shoulder, but there was no way he was going to be able to fly. So it was just a really sad event. Did he survive? I honestly don't know, but I think so. Once they got the hooks out, he probably did get released. This is a little merganser nestling. Wandered away from his family apparently, but whoever found it said there was just no adult duck around. This is a common yellow throat, one of my favorite warblers. And this Canada gosling had a neurological injury. You can see there's a little dent in his head. So he did not survive. Here's a crow nestling. This little guy was ready for release, a saw-whet owl, and I took him to the Bangor City Forest, and I'm just taking a picture of him through the hole in the box. Chickadee came to me in a Dunkin' Donuts box. And whoever rescued him had put a bunch of food in there. And one of the things that Avian Haven tells us when we're rescuing a bird is no food and no water. And that is in case they have to be treated or have surgery or be anesthetized in some way, for the same reason that we don't eat or drink before surgery. And this is another saw-whet owl release. This is Shotgun Sue is with me. And the saw-whet owls do not waste any time getting out of there. I can't even find him. We were often given pigeons to release where there are other pigeons somewhere in Brewer, they said. I said, okay. And so we found this roof full of pigeons and suggested that this guy join all of those guys up on that roof. And he was a little hesitant. But eventually, he did fly up to that roof, and he's the one closest to the chimney. Avian Haven asked if I would go to Kindred Spirits Veterinary in Orrington to pick up some medication for a turkey that they didn't have medication for. So that was one of the days when I was dog sitting. So I put him in the back of the car and we went to the veterinaries and got the drugs. And I gave him a titled drug running dog. And then a few days later, I had to pick up a bird at the Bangor police station from the animal control officer there. She often has something that has to go and I get the call. And Gordon looks a little bit nervous, having earned his new title of drug running dog. He wasn't thrilled that we were picking something up at that department. This little saw-whet owl had been sitting for hours on this big rock next to this porch. It was a really cold day. And I was called to go collect him because surely something must be wrong. But he flew when I got there. He was perfectly fine. He was just enjoying the warmth up against that porch and on that rock. This is a warden who was bringing this eagle to me, but he suggested we meet in Old Town because he was at the end of his day, and these teenagers were part of a youth group that he participated in, and he wanted these kids to see this bald eagle. Clearly, they were pretty impressed with it. And I think this is the same eagle, and he did not survive. He had lead poisoning. I think they see that a lot. Here's a ruffed grouse on the left and a broad-winged hawk on the right.
Hi, Ellen.
Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt because this is awesome hearing all these stories, but we have just 5 minutes left.
Okay.
So
Okay.
is there anything, any story that you really wanted to make sure you got in, or any information specifically that you wanted to make sure you shared before we open it up for just a couple minutes of possible Q&A?
Yes, I would love to. I'll try to fast forward to today's. I have some
Ooh,
slides from
awesome.
today.
Okay, great.
I got a call yesterday asking if I could pick up 2 baby barred owls. And so I'm gonna go past a bunch of slides here. And I said, sure, it was in Bangor. So I went up over to get them, and the gentleman homeowner had them in a box, and I was driving away. I was about 3 miles away from his home when they called me back and said, there's another one. So I went back to get the third one. They oh, the snapping turtle story was funny, but anyway. So I did get the that box of owls home. I also had a box of starling nestlings. I kept them separated because I was thinking maybe the larger owl would love to have had a starling snack. But there's the starlings. So they spent the night with me. I took them down this morning, and here's the owls. They're pretty cute. So yeah, that
That's
was
so
today.
cute.
They
So
are.
cute. That's amazing.
The littlest one did not survive, but they were all from the same nest apparently, and the larger one got the bulk of the food, and the middle one got some food, and the littlest one probably didn't get very much. He was very undernourished. So I'm ready for questions.
Thank you so much, Ellen. It's
You're welcome.
really incredible just thinking about all these opportunities to be a part of healing in the world, often when the cause of harm is things that humans have done. So I just love that. It's
Oh,
really
thank you.
inspiring. And thank you for all of your work.
It's my pleasure.
Oh, yeah, it seems that way. It seems like it brings you a lot of joy.
It does.
So one person asked, can you come back and talk about the rest of the slides? So Marin and I feel bad about having to cut you short because I'm sure there were some really lovely stories with those remaining
One in
rescues.
particular that I didn't get to tell you about was a UPS guy found an owl beside the road, and he was in Orland. I went down to get the owl from him. I got some great pictures from him, and I told him that was the best package I ever received from a UPS driver, and he said it was by far the best package he'd ever delivered.
Oh, that's so cute.
It
I
is.
love that.
I can come back anytime. Yes, the answer is yes. If you want me to come back and finish that at some other point in time, I'd be happy to.
And
That's great.
and also, if anyone, I'm wondering if maybe there's any resources that you can send me that we could also put on our website too as a possibility. So if you wanted to like share, I don't know if you want to share your slideshow, but you could if you want to share any like links to any resources about Avian Haven too. That's something that we could put on our website.
Yeah, actually, that was one of the last slides. Was the
Oh,
if I can, there it is.
Great. Avianhaven.org.
And they're always looking for volunteers. Sometimes it's to feed baby birds, especially this time of year. When I delivered the owls and the starlings this morning, Laura said there were 40 birds coming in today,
Whoa.
and I took 8 of them.
Wow. That's amazing. Great. So if anyone in the audience wants to be a part of good care, go to avianhaven.org and explore volunteer opportunities. Also, Avian Haven is a nonprofit. That's correct, Ellen?
That's correct.
So donations to Avian Haven would be amazing to help care for the surgeries and the food and the housing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, no other questions have come in, and it's 5 o'clock. So thank you so much. And I just want to share again that we have the Wings Waves Woods Festival this weekend on Deer Isle. If you go to islandheritagetrust.org, you can check out the full schedule of those events. If anyone here in the audience wants to be a part of some birding, very accessible birding for all ages and levels, we would love to have you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Ellen. I really appreciate it.
Oddly enough, you're welcome. Oddly enough, I've got 2 messages now from Avian Haven to pick something up. So
Oh my goodness, you are on demand.
this is the very busiest time of year. So yeah, I love to jump in and help. Thank you so
That's
much.
amazing.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah. Thanks, Ellen.
Great.
You're welcome.
Have a good one, everybody.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.